Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. Today we're going to be reviewing Captain America, The Trial of Captain America. Hey everybody, welcome back to BK's Bullets. As always, I'm your host, Brent, and today we're going to be reviewing The Trial of Captain America by Brubaker, Daniel Acuna, Butch Geis, Mitch Breitweister. So, before we get into the review, let me ask you to please do one thing. Please subscribe. Helps me out, lets you know when I drop new videos, helps the channel grow, all that great stuff. Hit that bell if you're really crazy about me. So, Trial of Captain America. This is the penultimate trade of the Ed Brubaker Captain America run. And when I say that, I know he did Captain America after this run when we had Steve Rogers back and stuff like that. But to me, the Captain America run is this one right here that started in 2003, 2004, went all the way through this stuff through Fear Itself, or right up until the end of Fear Itself, basically. So this is it for me. I mean, nobody really talks, we're talking about it because I want to talk about it. Nobody really talks about the Captain America stuff he did after this. As part of the end of that run. You know, nobody talks about the Winter Soldier miniseries that bookends this run after the Fear Itself event. We will be talking about that. But, you know, everybody only talks about Captain America 1 through 50, which is, you know, the issue 1 through the Winter Soldier storyline to the death of Captain America right in the middle of that, through issue 50 and issue 50 and maybe Captain America Reborn, right? So, and most of that era is the death of Captain America storyline and the Civil War stuff, which is like 22 issues long. So, nobody talks about Bucky's time as Cap. So that is what we are doing with this review series, rereading it, kind of talking about the bigger themes and things that are going on here. So, my biggest complaint so far, Bucky was not in the Cap suit long enough. Like, this is a beautiful suit. This is the Marko Djurjevic cover. He was doing a lot of covers for Marvel at this time, 2009, 2010. Maybe this was 11, I'm not sure. But he's a wonderful artist. I think he's coming back to Marvel to do... I just saw some covers solicited by him. So I think he's coming back. He's been disappeared for a while, but he did some beautiful, beautiful covers for Marvel back in the day. And he also did some interiors, I think, on some Thor stuff. But he hasn't done a ton of interiors, at least that I've seen, for Marvel. Let's put that caveat on it. I do remember some stuff, but he was mostly covers, and boy are they beautiful. So hopefully he comes back and blesses us with his beautiful covers. But this is, the only time basically we see Bucky Cap in the suit is on the covers in this series. Does that mean I dislike this story? Not necessarily, because it is focusing on Bucky as Cap, or the question of should Bucky be Cap because he was the Winter Soldier. And this is really like the storyline where America finds out. They found out in the last storyline, No Escape, because of Zemo revealing it to everyone. But this is the one asking all the important questions, kind of discussing it, and letting us know that Bucky kind of deserves to be Cap because he is a good man at heart, and he wasn't fully in control of himself. So, just to refresh, Steve Rogers is alive again after the events of Captain America Reborn. He is the Winter Soldier. He is not necessarily the Captain America guy. He's the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. because this takes place in the heroic age of Marvel after Siege. So they've taken back control from everything from Norman Osborn. All that is not laid out in here. If you just remember when these came out, you can kind of piece that together. But if you're just reading this Cap run, you go from Nick Fury being alive to Maria Hill being head of S.H.I.E.L.D. to all of a sudden at the end of the death of Captain America storyline to, there's no mention of Secret Invasion at all. So why would Norman Osborn be the head of what is now Hammer? And what is that organization? To then all of a sudden Steve Rogers being the head of that, because that happens at the end of Siege. And I think there was a Heroic Age one-shot, if I'm not mistaken. All that stuff is like not important to this run, but they are the important things going on in the background of the Marvel Universe, to their context clues as to why Steve has such power here in this book. Because all of a sudden Steve is a guy who has, responsibilities and bureaucrats he talks to and answers to, things like that. And if you're not clued into all those happenings in the Marvel Universe, this might be a little bit difficult to understand what's going on. So that's why I mentioned those here in the review. Does it hurt the story at all? I didn't have an issue with it, but because I've read those stories and I do remember those events. But if you're coming into the Brubaker Cap run totally cold, if you just started reading comics in the last 5 years, it might hurt you a little bit, and you might have to do some Wikipedia research in order to follow along. Even though Brubaker doesn't really, again, my main complaint with the Reborn storyline was he didn't really tell us what's going on in the plot. Here we kind of know what's going on, but he doesn't remind you of any important things that is the positions his characters hold when they might be important to a new reader. Stan Lee's mantra was every comic is somebody's first comic, and that's why those comics from the 60s and 70s always start like the same way, or remind you what's going on, even though maybe you just read it a little bit ago. So we've kind of lost that thing here with modern comics, but I do think it is a reminder just to include a line like, Steve, you're the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. now, you can't act like that kind of thing. It's just clues, context clues for readers for stuff like this later on down the line. Just my opinion. But, so the trial of Captain America. So this is Bucky being put on trial for his crimes as the Winter Soldier. Specifically, the actions he took against Americans on American soil, including the bombing of Philadelphia, which happened in the Winter Soldier storyline. I think in the second half of that, there was a bombing. Again, if you hadn't read that, you wouldn't really know that's what they're talking about. There's just some stuff in here with, this happened in Philly. He was behind Philly, and it's never there. There's no editor's note in the bottom to say like, see, Captain America number 8, which was helpful. But to even call this really the trial of Captain America is a little misleading because, again, half this book is a showdown with sin at the Statue of Liberty. Yes, there is a trial. We do see all of it. How it ends, I thought was maybe a bit of a cop-out. I think there was only going to really end one way after Brubaker at the time was writing Daredevil, and Daredevil had ended up in prison, so he kind of already wrote that storyline. So maybe he didn't want to do that again with Bucky here. It was only going to end one way, but he still finds a way to kind of insert the character into the same storyline, even though it's a little bit different. And even to say Daredevil in prison again, it's going on right now when they did it 15 years ago. Like, if you read Daredevil comics today, he's serving time for accidentally killing a person, like a manslaughter charge, and the Zdarsky run that's going on right now. And Brubaker, that was the beginning of his run on Daredevil. I'm pointing my shelves to Brubaker's run, which I'm going to read very, very soon, after I read the Bendis stuff again. But I think it's enjoyable. I think courtroom stuff can be good in comics. Sometimes it can be bad. Unfortunately, because it's so superhero based and it's been done before and better, I don't think this stands up as a strong trial thing. Like, there's so many Batman stories, or maybe a Gotham Central story also written by Brubaker and maybe Greg Rucka, that does the courtroom stuff in comics better than is done here in the trial of Captain America. What I do find interesting, though, is that Brubaker makes this choice to have the trial be a bench trial and not a jury trial. So they're only playing to the judge, not necessarily the jury. And, I think the best part of the trial is them involving Dr. Faustus, who is the guy who programmed Sharon Carter to kill Steve Rogers earlier in the run. They do bring him back. He's got a bit of a different look. He's gotten rid of the long beard and kind of the weird haircut. But he makes a pretty good example of why mind control is a good defense for these crimes. Because he mind controls, I think, the prosecutor right in the middle of the trial in order to cause some trouble. So it brings up some good questions. But there's also a good argument at the end of the prosecution saying, like, hey, these people, it's always an excuse with them. Oh, it was an alien. It was a Skrull. I was mind controlled. Or, they're never held accountable. They always have a reason, always have an excuse to get away with it. And it's a really, really good point because, hey, that's comics. There's always a reason for something, right? There's always a reason why your bad guy goes bad. Remember Hal Jordan went evil in the early 90s. That was later retconned. Oh, he didn't turn evil. It wasn't all him. There was a fear entity that had taken control of his mind and was mind controlling him. So it wasn't really Hal, so we can bring him back. Same thing, right? So it does make a good point that there's never really any real consequences for these superheroes because they have to do that monthly, turnover, that schedule to keep these comics alive, to keep the IP alive, so that Marvel, Disney can keep the characters going in their other licensing deals, movies, TV shows, games, etc., right? Sometimes that's the joy of reading indie comics, is that there are consequences and stakes. Like if you read The Walking Dead, there's a definitive beginning, middle, and end, especially now that it's over. But, Robert Kirkman wasn't really like trying to keep these characters alive. He was just trying to write a really good book. So that's one of the things I think that superhero comics falters a little bit, is there's never any real consequences for characters, especially in the long scheme of things, because you have a new writer come on who wants to reset the status quo. It's the same reason why Spider-Man went from being married to no longer married in one more day. Somebody else wanted a new status quo, and they figured out a way to give it to him while undoing a whole lot of history. But back to the Trial of Captain America, I still think it's a good story, but, for being the Bucky Cap book that Brubaker said in interviews recently on Word Balloon with John Suntress that he wanted to write, doesn't really feel like Bucky is Captain America. I mean, half the time Bucky is in this outfit, he's dealing with Winter Soldier stuff, or he's not in uniform at all, or like the last, not No Escape, but the one before that, Two Americas, he is not in the Cap outfit, he's dressed up as Bucky because there's another crazy Cap to deal with. There's too many different things instead of Bucky just going up, being Captain America and going up against the classic villains. Like, the only villain he really went up against, you could say, is Zemo in the issue, or the trade paperback, the story before this. Red Skull he kind of went up against in Reborn, but again, still dressed as Captain America. There's still more other crazy Cap stuff going on at that time. Does he go up against Dr. Faustus in the Death of Captain America? Maybe, but it's not really about him. It's about other stuff. And even at the end of that Death of Captain America trade, that 50s Cap is still the guy trying to assassinate the president instead of actually any other classic Cap villain. There's no Batroc the Leaper in here. There's no showdown with the Red Skull. There's just Zemo. There's, Zola is present in all that Death of Cap stuff, but it's not really him. It's a whole gang of supervillains. So if you were to say what's a run that highlights Captain America and his best villains, I don't know that you would point to the Bucky Cap run of Captain America. You might go to Steve Englehart or something like that, or something more, not even recent. Like the one after this was the Secret Empire stuff after Brubaker leaves, and then Ta-Nehisi Coates is still on Captain America, which I'm not really enjoying because again, it's Cap and everything else in the world, and I think Ta-Nehisi Coates needs to figure out how to tell shorter, succinct stories instead of dragging out one long story over 80 issues. That's just me. But I do think it's a fun thing. I mean, the artwork is really good in here. You have Daniel Acuna doing the first issue, and if you haven't seen Daniel Acuna's artwork, it is very different from the other stuff that is throughout this run. Daniel Acuna does all the artwork himself, pencils, inks, colors, all this stuff. He's the only artist on this part of the book. And he chooses to use colors more than he does to use inks. So that's a very interesting thing he does. There's still some inking here and there, but it's a lot more simplified as opposed to Butch Geist, who does all the artwork afterwards, who does a lot of the grimy, the grit, the scratchy, the detailed thing that modern comic books kind of do. So, in the end, I think Trial of Captain America is a good story. It's just not necessarily a good Captain America story or the best one as we end this run of Brubaker on Cap, or the Bucky Cap run, as some people call it. Did he set out to tell a Bucky Cap book? I don't know. He is telling a Bucky story, but it's not necessarily about Bucky being Captain America. And I think that's unfortunate. And I don't know if we'll ever see this era of Captain America again. I don't know if Bucky will ever pick up the shield or anything like that. Winter Soldier nowadays seems to have been kind of shoved aside. He's not exactly the main character after his creator kind of left the book. Yeah, he's in the movies and he had his own TV show and things like that, but I don't really see him like rising to prominence. Every time they try to bring him in, it's never really as organic or anything like that, the way that Brubaker was doing it back when he originally started appearing in the early 2000s. So that's my thoughts on the Trial of Captain America. I think it's a good story, but in the end, it's, again, nothing replaces the beginning of this run, and it's easy to see why when you read it. So let me know what you guys think of this story down below, and I'll see you guys next time here in the Funny Pages.